Hello and welcome today to my channel, The Social Canvas UK. My name is Carol and today I'm going to be showing you how to paint a simple pear in acrylics. This is in a little bit like the style of Cezanne, but I'm going to add modern elements to it, and I hope to be adding more of these kind of paintings in the near future. So if you're painting with me today, you can grab your acrylics if you're using them. You can use watercolors if you wish. I've got a pot of water because it's a water-based paint. I've got a selection of different brushes here, which I'll go through at each stage. I've got a little palette that I've used a bit with my colours on, and I've got a small canvas, which I think is an 8 by 10 inch canvas. But whatever you've got and you want to paint along, then let's go for it. Now I don't have an example that you see here because I'm doing it straight from memory, if you like. So it's not a difficult painting. You should be able to follow it. As I said, I go through it step by step. One thing I am going to do today, which is a little bit different from normal, I'm going to pencil out a little bit of my painting, just the pear part. This is a 3B pencils. You can see it's well used. It's right down to its stump. But if you want to paint it out rather than pencil it out, you can do that too. Okay, so I'm going to, as I said, make my pear quite big. So I'm going to start with just a simple rough idea. With a pencil, you don't have to make straight lines. They can be just like rough lines, and as many lines as you want. And I'm going to round my pear out. It's going to sit kind of on a flat bottom, so I'm going to flatten that out as I'm coming around there. And it doesn't have to be a perfectly symmetrical pear. It can be slightly out of shape. And I'm just going to line out the sides here as well, because that's sitting on the table. You always want it anchored on something, of course. So that's just a very simple basic drawing. And then I'm going to paint in my background first, because I'm just going to find it easier to get that in. So I'm going to actually, the colours I'm using today, I've got yellow and red because that's going to be my pear main colours, but I've also got a bit of burnt sienna, burnt umber, black, white, and a little bit of Payne's grey. Today I think I might just go for a very subtle background. So I'm going to wet my brush. I'm using a small angle brush here, and I'm going to get some white and a little bit of Payne's grey, which is kind of like a, well, it's a grey really, so you can use black, it doesn't matter. I might add a little touch of red in with that, just because I want it to be a little bit, this is, the good thing about this is you can make your background colour whatever you like. You know what? That colour I've made, I quite like it, but I've decided that I'm going to actually paint that tone underneath instead. So let's just, again, I'm going to probably put several colours in here, not just the one. I'm going to grab a bit of white. You may be able to see I've used this canvas before, but hopefully I've done a good job that you can't see it that much, but I do like to reuse. I'm going to grab a bit of yellow now because I just fancy a little bit of yellow in there. A little bit more white maybe. Just building up different tones really. A bit more red back in it. You can see, just put a little pinky tone in there. I love using lots of different colours. I think it's fun. You go back in and change the tone at some point. But this is where you can get to be creative with your colours. It's going to be quite light, I think, on this side of the pear, so I'm just going to add some white right under here, because the light's probably more on that side, so let me just, it's going to get darker over this side, so I'm going back to my grey tone that I have, my pinky grey tone as I call it. A little bit of red, Payne's grey and white to get to that. Of course, this is water-based paint, so grabbing the, might come out a little bit different colour if I don't. A little bit more black in with that. Should say Payne's grey. And I'm going to come around here a bit. Getting all the paint on there. Getting all the paint off my brush. Right underneath my pear. I might just leave that rough for now. And sometimes I pick up too much colour and then I find that's okay, I don't mind that. I'm going to put a little bit of pink in there. Why not? Maybe a little bit of pink in there like that. Oops. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that like that. And then I'm going to decide what colour I'm actually going to do my background there. I might make it sort of a bluish grey. So at this point I might just grab a little bit of blue. This is just cyan blue. It's not an expensive blue, but whatever you want. I'd make it subtle, but if you know what, if you want to have a go at making it a darker colour too, you can. I'm not going to use very much of this. I've got all sorts of paints going in here. I've got Daler-Rowney, I've got Golden, Winsor and Newton, and a cheaper version, Scola, which is a British made paint, which we use for our paint and sip public events. And I'm going to grab, again, I'm going to just decide here what colour I'm going to come out with. I think I'm going to come out with again, more of a bit more blue than red. So I'll come out with a slightly darker tone. A bit more white in there. I may change this as I'm going along. But I don't want it too much like that, so maybe a bit more blue now I'm thinking about it. I want it to be a contrast. Yeah, it's come out. That's kind of a nice blue. I don't mind that. Now you don't have to paint all of your background. You could have just done a central area, like just around the pear. So like if I just want to go, again, I'm just going to use different angles on this brush to, doesn't have to be a perfectly symmetrical round shape. Here I'm just going to grab a bit more white as I'm coming to my, I want it to be completely different in tone there and see the, just grab it while it's wet though. And again, you can just angle your brush at different angles and make it more of a patchy background, which is what I'm doing really. Bigger the brush, the better actually for the background. I've not changed my brush just because it's easier for me to keep going with it, but obviously if you're in a hurry and you want to cover well, then you can grab a bigger brush. You know, I try not to make things too difficult for people to follow, because I know a lot of people that do choose to come to my channel are beginners and just want to learn a little bit simpler style of painting, and that's what I aim. I try not to make it too difficult, and hopefully I don't. Again, I'm just going around the edge slightly darker than the rest here. Got no songs on today. It's a quiet day today. Quiet contemplation. Of course, you can listen to your own music if you want to paint along to music. You don't have to be subjected to mine, that's for sure. Oops, a little bit more white. If you're mixing again and you've run out, don't worry if your colours come out different. I mean, I just start with I've got a darker tone there, but you know, you can always add some of that darker tone or different tone in your painting here and there, just to give it a bit of interest. Right, so I'm going to just come around this side of my painting. That's a little bit dark around there. That's all right though. A lot of painters like to separate colours when they do still lifes as well. You know, you get one colour one side of your painting and a different block colour on the other side of the painting. And if you look back at some of the, you know, Impressionist, etc., and post-Impressionism, they do a lot of things like that. And modern day ones too. Say, you know, with painting, you don't have to come with a plan. You know, sometimes it just migrates into something wonderful, really. And you know, yeah, if you ever make, you know, little things you don't like, you know, you can fix them. You know, keep painting over them until you've got something you like, or changing your colours. It's easier to do that, of course, with acrylic probably than it is many other styles of paint. Certainly can't do that with watercolour very well, but so you can see how I've migrated from blue into a bit more of the purple tone as I'm coming around the corner here. I'm going to line out that section there. Again, I'm just going to get all the paint off my brush here and there. Use different directions of your brush to get rid of any brush marks. I kind of like that colour. That's a different colour. That's definitely nice. I'm not straight yet, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to still grab my, get some paper towel, because that's always handy to have. Just wash that off somewhat. Pull my brush together again, and I'm going to grab a little bit of black to the side. I think I'm going to leave it at black. Maybe a little bit of white in with it. So you can use Payne's grey, or you can use just a made-up grey. And I'm flattening my brush both sides, just so I've got an even shape there. And I'm going to try and my best to get this line coming across here reasonably straight without leaning in my paint. I don't think that's perfectly straight. Of course, you can always use a ruler or a pencil. You can see how I've come up quite high on that. So what I'm going to do is going to bring that line underneath my colour so that I can actually marry it up somehow so that it's not looking so out of line, and maybe bring this line up a little bit. can also use a small round brush if you don't have an angled brush like this. Sometimes you can get the points better, right up to you. Okay, that's about right. I might get rid of some of that line here and there. Okay, now we're coming to the pear. So again, for this, I'm going to try and stick to my little angled brush, but I may change it at some point. So it needs to be reasonably clean for the most part, but I will say that it doesn't matter initially because I'm going to grab some yellow and some more white, which I seem to have thrown on the floor, so grab some more white. So I'm going to start with the lighter tone first, and that being a light yellow, so I'm just going to grab a very small amount of that to the side. I'm going to grab a teeny amount of red, and I don't want much because I just want it to take off the edge of that lemony yellow. So I'm just going to see how that looks to start off with. That's quite a light tone, so I'm going to start with a light tone over this side, like so. And maybe up here a bit. I'm going to grab a little bit more red in with that to take off that lemony yellow a little bit more, so that it's got a touch of kind of peach in there, if you like. And then I'm going to add a little bit more red to my yellow, coming out with quite a dark peach now, as you can see. A little bit of water on that. And I'm going to start adding a little bit here and there. Could tone it down a bit with the white. I don't want it too bright. So the light is kind of coming from this side. I'm going to show a shadow this side of my pear. So it doesn't matter what tones you go so much on this side. We just want to leave some lighter tones there. But I'm right underneath the... Mind you don't go into your blue and pick that up too much. Anyway, a little bit more red. Slightly darker red going on there, you can see. I'm going to try and build this up a little bit rather than add too many dark colours straight away. Like here, I'm going back to some lighter tone. And I'm going to grab a little bit more yellow. No matter how subtle I try and get it, sometimes it's still bright. And I'm going to add a little bit more, see, again, slightly brighter tone in there. That colour in a little bit. Okay, here and there. I'm going to grab a little bit of my burnt sienna. If you don't have that, don't worry. It's kind of like an orange colour, but it's got a slight brown tone in with it. So you can make that up. This is a heavier bodied one, so I am doing a mixture of different acrylics here, and it's okay to mix them up a little bit. Some mix better than others. If you've got the really heavy bodied ones, they might not mix as well. Again, I'm using different sides of my brush here, you can see, and I'm going to use that tone just under there. And bring a little flat line down, I think, on that bit there, like that. And just a touch in there. Doesn't matter if you're working on a canvas and you see the tooth behind that, it's okay. That's all part of it when you use a canvas, to see some of the toothy part. Okay, so I think at this point I'm gonna grab a little bit of brown. Grab a little bit of brown, a little bit of water. Just a little bit of black in there as well. And I'm going to start adding, try not to lean in my paint. This is where it gets a bit difficult if you're working with wet paint. And I'm coming right under that edge there. And I'm going to line that out. Coming right in there. I'm going to make that a little bit rounder on the edge. I'm going to bring my brown in. Just soft edges on that one. So I'm just leaving my brush loose rather than a straight line. And then I'm going to come all the way down, I think, with that brown. This is burnt umber I'm using right now, I believe. Yes, it is. Again, don't worry if your edges are not perfectly straight, because that's the whole name of the game there. You don't want it to be straight. You want it to be a loose edge. I'm going to bring that in a little bit. Cover that edge there. Bring in a little bit of that brown in there, just to give it the effect that, you know, it's kind of got a bulbous bottom, for want of a better word. I'm just grabbing a little bit of black on with that now, because I want it to be a little bit darker as I'm coming down here. I'm going to bring that line all the way across like that. So that's the darker edge now. Mix it that well, actually. Quite dark. I want to leave that edge quite loose. I don't mind having this straighter edge there, but I do want to leave that quite loose. And I'm just grabbing a little bit more black, but I'm putting a little bit of red in with my black. You can also make a brown tone for that as well, so I'm just bringing that down slightly on that edge there. I'm going to make it slightly darker, so I've got a little bit of black and a little bit of red. Again, that makes a very dark brown as well. So it's good to experiment with your colours. Oops. Bringing that edge in darker still on that side. Starting with the edge dark before I bring it in a bit. Okay. Right. So I'm going to grab some red. I'm not cleaning my brush off because I've still got brown on there, and that's okay if it's a slightly reddish brown. And I'm just again going over my edge there with a little bit of that and making sure I haven't got the white showing through on my canvas. Pressing it in a little bit of dark red. Not much. Now I'm going to wash that off though, because I don't want too much of the brown left on. Give it a wipe off. I'm going to go to some red. Again, with the red, I'm gonna leave it a little bit pinky by just adding a little bit of white there. Not too much. Maybe a touch of yellow because I don't want it to be too pink. It needs to have a reddish look to it. And I'm gonna sort of add, yeah, it's a bit too pink. So let me add a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow. Experimentation. I may have to make that a little even more red actually. So I'm adding a touch of that red up there. And I might bring that round a bit. Going right into the brown there. Going to grab a little bit more yellow in with that red. It's a little bit more orangey yellow. And I'm going to add a touch of red over here. Orangey red, that is. But not too orange, she says. And just add in a little tiny amount of that over there. Now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add a bit more in there. Now then, if you ever want to blend with your finger, by the way, it's an easy way to get a good blend going. Otherwise, as I said, you can just use both sides of your brush and different angles of your brush. We're looking for a soft edge anyway, more like a dry brush edge than we are a solid edge, so like that. Oops. If your brush is starting to separate, just try and get a little bit of water. I mean, sometimes you have to wash it out completely to get it straight back together again like that. Okay. Now this has elements of red in, but not too much, so I think I may leave that there for now. I'm going to go back in with more yellow now. I'm going to start with a soft yellow again. I do want it to be sort of deeper than what I've got, so I'm going to grab some yellow to the side. If I can find anywhere to grab it to. Again, I do want a little bit of red in with it, but not too much again. So I've gone to a deeper orange there. That's better. That's what I was looking for. So just going to add a little bit of that round there, and I think a little bit subtle amount across here, maybe up there a little bit. It's beginning to take shape how I want it now. I'm not going to do too much yellow up here. I'm going to try and leave it subtle tone, but again, don't go into, if you go into your blue, it's going to go green, so bear that in mind. Although you could be doing a green pear. Add a little bit of white to that tone now because I want it to soften up a little bit as I'm coming around here. A little bit more white in with that, as you can see. Soften that up. And up here, I really don't want a strong colour, so I'm adding more white back to that kind of yellow tone that I had, and I'm trying to go over those edges very slightly. Now then, I'm going to wipe that off a little bit, and I'm going to grab some white in here. I still have some of that tone on my brush, but I'm going to bring some of that white across. Or I should say it's white, but it's not because I've got some yellow on my brush. And I'm just going to make some marks in different directions. You can see it's very soft. So I've made a couple that way. Again, just soft marks across there. And I might do that down here too. Very soft marks. It's really where maybe the light's shining on the pear a bit more. Right, get in there, get in there. I think I need a very pale amount of brown, so I'm going to touch a little bit of brown, just bringing it over to my yellow here because I'm trying to make a very sort of soft, it's really not got a name. I'm just adding some different elements of my own in here, maybe a bit darker than that. No, a bit darker than that. So I'm adding a little bit of brown each time because I just want to add a little bit more brown coming out there. So it's a very subtle brown, as you can see. I've sort of used a bit of yellow and other colours coming out there. It's a good idea to get a pear if you've got one and study it in some light, or take a picture of it and study the tones in there. Because it's just the way the light bounces off of it, really. Right, before I go on to anything else, because I'm not sure how much more I want to do, I'm going to do my little stem there. Because I've got this kind of light brown colour going, I'm just going to stay with that. It's more of a creamy tone by the time I've got that there. So I'm going to just, that should be all nice and dry now. I'm going to bend this over a little bit, like so. Doesn't matter. Comes out. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect shape or form. But I'm going to grab then some of that black brown tone going. So I've got brown with a little bit of black again. Haven't washed my brush off. There's no need if you're using a darker colour. I'm going to thin my little stem out a little bit by just making it look like it's a little bit thinner on the edge. And right at the end here, underneath, I'm just dotting out some dark edge, and then underneath I'm just adding a little bit there, like so. Right, I may have added too much, so I think I'm gonna go back and grab some white now and a little bit of yellow in there. I'm just going to add a slight lighter tone on top. It's still wet, but I'm still going to go over it because I don't like the way it comes out. Okay, it's a little bit better. I'm going to add a little bit of the burnt sienna in there as well, on that area, I think. You can use red if you haven't got burnt sienna. That's also okay. Touch of red or something in the place. I think that bit still needs thinning out, and I'm not happy with that, so I'm going to try my best and use a darker bit in the middle here. Again, I'm going to my dark brown, black sort of tone, just so it looks like it's thinner as it's coming in. It's a little bit better. Again, I'm just going to make that edge so that it's not too symmetrical. Okay. All right, so at this stage I do want to do a little bit of edging. So I'm going to grab, and you can, I have used a little bit of blue in some places, but it's not essential that you use the same tone as me. I'm going to grab a little bit of brown to begin with and decide how I want to do this. This is where, if it's easier for you to use a round brush, then do so, but I'm just going to, again, flatten your brush out on both sides if you're using this so you've got a decent edge. If If you find it difficult to use this one, just move to a different brush. But I'm just adding a little bit of an edge, very subtly, using the edge there to like I'm using the very tip of my brush just to get a little bit of an edge going on that. And in fact, I'm going to grab a little bit of black now and make this even darker on my edge here, bringing that in a bit. Okay. All right, as you can see, it looks like it's floating a bit, so we need to anchor it a bit more by the way of shadow. So what I'm going to do is let me just do a little bit more black under there first. I'm happy with that. So for the shadow, I'm going to use a bit more of a brownish tone. You know, shadows can be used in really any colours you like. You can be very creative with colour, but I'm going to use a sort of a reddish brown, I want to say. So I'm going to grab some brown to a side. You can also use black and red to make a reddish brown. I'm going to not try and go too dark too quick, so I want my reddish brown first of all. Again, quite wet like that. And I'm just going to sort of pretty much guess where my shape is coming out by just coming round. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is just round that out a little bit right from this edge here. I'm going to round it out like that, and then I'm going to fill that in first and then see how I go. As I said, I don't want it too dark to begin with because I want to see how my tones work out. You can leave your edges rough if you want to. Come right into your edge there. Might bring that up a little bit more. Out a bit more. Just reaching it off my canvas here. Just left it quite loose on the end here. But you have to sort of really work out, okay, shape-wise, how's it going, and you can fix it at any stage. The way mine's coming is out a bit more, just out a little bit more. So the bottom's quite round and then it gets a little thinner. Okay, so nearer to the edge, it's a little bit darker. So I'm grabbing a little bit of the black in with my brown, a little bit more red actually, because I don't want too black, otherwise I'm going to be overdoing it. So I am coming up right up to my edge with that tone. Yes, it sort of looks like you're losing your edge a little bit, but don't worry about that because it's all part of it. Softly does it. Don't have to go crazy on this, just softly. Always stand back from your painting and have a look, see how it's going as well. You can always tell when you step back from it what it is you need to do right or change, etc. As I'm going to do. I think I might just bring my edge out just slightly a little bit more. I'm not happy with that. pushing my brush in there a little bit. Still quite dark at the edge, so I'm still coming in right up to my edge there with a little bit darker tone. Right. Right, I think I'm almost done, but I don't like my edges here, so I am going to just take a smaller brush, just a very small round brush, and just get rid of some of those a little bit by grabbing my kind of creamish, yellowish, whitish, whatever you want to call it, tone here, and just lose a little bit of my edge. So I'm going to leave some of it, but I just don't want it too visible. So and just lose a little bit. So I wanted a little bit showing for sure. And this is where you can just, you know, get to add any bits that you want to at the end. I'm going to just highlight this on the top a bit more. Hopefully I managed to thin it out a little bit more. And I'm almost done. Just going to add a little touch more of my yellowy orange in there because I kind of like that tone, and I'm going to bring it just a little bit more into this area here, and I may add a little bit of it into here too. That's what I'm saying, you know, with painting you can keep going until you're totally happy with it, but if you've got to a point and you're like, oh, I like that, then try not to keep going with it until you're happy, because otherwise you're just like, sometimes you just go a little bit too far. But we can all do that, of course. And you have to say stop. I'll just put a little bit of sheen, as I call it, back in there as well. I'm going to say the light is just shining on maybe that area there. And I really must stop, so I'm just bringing a little bit of lighter back over here now. Just add a little bit more white to my orange. And she has to say, that is it. Well, she doesn't have to, but she's going to anyway. Because if not, she can just keep going all day. There we go. That's kind of a simple pear. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to just put my initials in the corner as usual and call it done for now, although at any point I could go back and play with it again. But you know, just wanted to show you a simple version, or simplish, I can't even say it, simplish. I haven't got my right teeth in, clearly. I'm just going to sign my initials right there. You should try and do it in a colour that's in the painting already. And that is my pear. So if you like it, please like it at the bottom. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do that too. I shall be adding more small paintings coming along. But also go to my social canvas page, the Social Canvas UK, and like that too. And I hope you can join me again soon. I want to say thank you again for joining me. Au revoir, goodbye, arrivederci. Thank you.